Hello friends, and thank you for being with us today here at David Christopher's. I'm Jen.
I'm David.
And we are back today to try to inspire you with these beautiful narcissus. What are they called? Narcissus. I always want to call them a narcissist, but they're narcissus.
They are the most self-centered plant around. So yeah, narcissus would be.
That's what they are.
Guess that's close. Yeah.
Yes, and so we have David's cell phone dinging.
I turned it. I made it on.
Okay.
Put it on silent now.
So we actually have a lot of these in our yard at home, big bundles, and David was actually going to try to dig up a big clump of them this morning. I didn't know exactly what he was doing when he stopped the truck to get out, and then he went around, and I was like, "Oh, you mean you're going to dig the whole thing up?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "No, I'm going to have a gap in them." And
there's like a ring of them.
Yeah, well, I was not too thrilled with that idea. And I thought, what better way we can leave mine in the ground where they're beautiful and can thrive and grow back. And we can use these artificial narcissus.
And these actually look exactly the same, except they have just fewer leaves. There's many more grass leaves on the real ones. You get some, pops of bloom here and there, but for the most part, it's a lot of leaf. And this is kind of, evened out. It's a little leaf and little bloom.
So you're going to put these in a wreath, correct?
I am.
And you're going to share hopefully some fun little tips with us along the way so that
let's hope so.
Everyone can be a better wreath maker.
I'm hoping.
I'm looking at we have these new microphones and they have been.
What's happening?
Yours is like inside the collar of your shirt.
Well, I sound very throaty, I bet.
I bet you do.
But that's normal for me anyway.
Y'all, we are struggling. We had a Rode mic that we used for years and it was fine, but it picked up every little noise around. And so we've tried out these new lapel mics, trying to find a place to clip them without a lapel. David's was in his pocket last week. It kept falling down inside of his pocket. We ended up with no audio halfway through. So the struggle's real. Bear with us. And hopefully this will go off without any issues today.
We'll see. 50-50. So we're going to be using our Paperwhites today, the artificial ones, not the real ones, so Jen can keep her nice little Paperwhite collection at home. And we're going to be using the whole plant here. So we're going to find a spot kind of on the side to cram these in. And it's okay if they lean forward, lean out a little bit. We are going to bend this piece around just to help that secure itself in there. And we're going to try and add 2 to 3 of these narcissus to each spot that we are placing on the wreath. But we just want this to have a very natural feel to it. I was planning on using real ones and showing you how to plant real narcissus in a wreath. I thought that would have been fun. It's only fun while the blooms last though, and they don't last that long on these particular kinds of plants. So yeah, it might be better to do them in artificial. But these are usually something that we use a lot during the spring season, a lot during Easter, because they naturally bloom. At least ours do in our area. Ours at our house have just bloomed this week, I think. So, and Easter is usually, mid-April-ish or early to mid-April-ish. So they're pretty close to on time to when you would want them to bloom. And, we wanted to kind of show you what to do with those since those were naturally blooming right now. I think I'm going to use 3 of these plants at least on this bottom piece. And They don't always droop. They normally stick pretty straight up out of the ground, but once you do cut them or uproot them, sometimes they will droop a little bit. So it's okay if you've got a little, you know, variation to how they are. They don't have to be perfectly straight up and down. It's okay to give them a little curve here and there. But we do want them to look like, we want to cluster those pieces together. We want them to look like they have been kind of planted in our wreath, which is twisting on me a little bit. Actually, I think I'm going to do a third one on the other side also. Winging it as we go here. Just to spread that out a little bit to both sides. And we'll tilt some of these back, some of them forward. Just let those be a little wild and free. And actually, I think I'm going to go for another one on this top portion, get a little bit closer to the top of my wreath. I'm glad I brought a few more. And make sure you bend all of the foliage out, let it not be perfectly straight either. Give it that nice curve that you expect from some things like narcissus foliage or lily grass. Okay, so we've got our planted pieces in, and we're going to use a little bit of our clematis foliage.
Can you tell us maybe why you prefer to use the grapevine wreath over other bases that are available? Like, we've had people ask about straw.
I think part of my aversion to straw is my parents always had a wholesale florist as I was growing up, and I'm a child of the 80s, and there were millions of straw things. They were making things like corn husk dolls, and they were making wreaths out of straw, and, you know, raffia hanks and things like that. So I'm just not a huge fan of them, maybe because I remember it too much from my childhood, but also, and it just kind of depends, maybe that's personal preference. I like the brown of the grapevine because I feel like it makes that green pop a little bit more than the straw does. So I tend to go with grapevine as opposed to straw more often than not. It's been quite a while since I've done a straw wreath, but most of the same ideas really apply to either straw or grapevine. Straw is somewhat less secure, I guess I would say, is like, I find things, we ship a lot of things, we make a lot of wreaths or things that we ship, and I don't want these to ever come apart. So once they're in there, I want you to have to work really hard to get them out. And with that, with a grapevine wreath, you get more of that than you do with a straw wreath. I feel like my personal opinion is that the grapevine holds it in place a little bit better. So that's one of the main reasons, I think. So I'm really just separating some of the leaves and cutting down in that V'd section right there. Getting some glue on this and then getting that into the grapevine really well. And then separate out those clematis vine pieces because we want this to look really trailing and wispy. But I do want some to kind of go up my wreath here. I'm going to add this longer piece toward the top. And the great thing about some of these grapevine wreaths is I can tuck like a piece of the vine up here so that it will stay where I want it, because this clematis vine has wire in it, but it's not like the stiffest wire ever. So if I really want this to stay right here, I'll just go in between one of the little vines and get it to pop right there, and that way it really won't move anywhere. I'll grab my third clematis vine here, and I'm just cutting like some of these longer pieces off. Again, I'm gonna separate this out into that V and cut there, because that's a good piece that I can use that whole piece solid.
So if you're new to our channel, don't be afraid to cut your stems and things apart. You don't want to stick the whole clematis leaf vine into the wreath most of the time. You're going to want to cut it up into pieces. And that's going to cover a lot more wreath as well. I think sometimes people can be afraid to cut.
And if you put like a large piece in like I just did, and I decided this one was too long, it was bleeding into my other piece over here, I just cut that longest piece off. I'm going to stick it back in somewhere else. So don't feel like if you've already put it in. I will say I don't like taking things out of wreaths. So once I've put it in, I don't want to take it out, but if I cut a long piece off, that's okay. That's not really taking anything out of the wreath. I'm going to fill in some of these spots here, but we want to still be able to see some of the narcissus foliage, so we don't want to fill it up too much entirely. And these are really, really simple. It's just a little bit of clematis spray and the narcissus, of course, or narcissist, whichever you prefer. We just want this to kind of like branch out like everything was planted and it's getting its life back in it, because it is spring and it is time to come up from the ground, except it's coming up from a grapevine, and a little bit of that trailing down lets it really, that realism really sink in, because if something is growing on, if a vine is growing like on something where it doesn't necessarily have something to attach to, it's gonna kind of trail down and fall a little bit. And then the last thing I'm gonna use is just a little bit of this asparagus fern, just to fill in a couple of little places. I'm going to take this little plastic cap off that holds all these. It's glued on pretty good, so you can cut these apart, but I like to just take that plastic end off. That they really put those on there in case you're just planting this like in a container. You really want to just put some styrofoam in and plop that whole piece down in a container. But these are paper wrapped. So I just pull each individual stem and I get individual pieces, as opposed to one giant bush. And then I'm just going to add that, because that different texture I really think helps on this particular wreath. And got some spots I can fill in just a little. And asparagus fern is one of those things that naturally grows around here. So we've got clematis vine and narcissus, which we've had growing in our yard at some point. Not clematis at the house we're in now, but in the previous house we planted a clematis vine in our on our mailbox, I think. Let it grow.
Yes, it was from my grandmother, and I regret not taking part of it with me when we moved.
Maybe we could stop and steal part of it.
Yeah, maybe.
It'll grow back.
It's true. My mother may still have some. I can check with her. She's good about carrying those things around from wherever she moves from place to place.
But just that extra little touch of that spring rye, I think really helps in here. This asparagus fern, whatever you choose to call it. Don't forget to leave a little bit of this hanging down, just like the clematis vine. We want a little bit of that to hang also, so I'll use this piece. Let that fall down a little bit.
And there you have it, the completed wreath. I think you did a fantastic job. That was easy enough, and you really only used the grapevine wreath plus 3 products.
I think so.
The narcissus, the clematis, and the
Asparagus fern.
Asparagus fern.
Yeah.
So if you check the description, you're going to see a link that takes you to all the products that we used today. And we also have some promo codes going on our website if you're watching this in April of 2024. So check out our website so that you can save when you place an order with us. We do ship, we sell wholesale, we sell retail. We have lots of kits and things and do-it-yourself projects that you can do at home. Do you think this would make a good kit?
Maybe.
Maybe.
24-inch wreath is not always everybody's go-to, and this one's a little bit larger. We usually do that for 18-inch grapevine wreaths.
Okay.
24s sometimes get a little difficult in the shipping.
So just keep in mind, this is a 24-inch wreath, so it's a little larger than the 18-inch wreaths that we sometimes show. But if you have a large door, this would be perfect, I think, for that.
Yeah.
So make sure that you like this video, subscribe so you don't miss any other future videos. Turn your notification bell on so that it'll ding and say, hey, David and Jen have a new video. You need to go watch it. And we can't wait to see you next time. Leave us a comment and let us know if you have these flowers in your yard.
Paperwhites or narcissus.
Yeah, I would love to hear where you live and if you have these growing in your garden or your yard or your lawn. Whatever you call it, depending on where you live. But here in Alabama, we call it our yards, usually.
Or your wreath, whatever it's growing in.
Yes, whatever it's growing in. Take care.